Hey everybody, and welcome to this month's Moon Song. I'd like to open our space today by sharing a song that brings in the elements and is also a tribute to my good friend Mapacho. Porque mi cuerpo es la tierra, mi agua viene con sangre, porque mi espíritu es fuego y mi palabra es el aire, porque mi cuerpo es la tierra, mi agua viene con sangre. Mi aliento es el espíritu de fuego con aire. Con mi aliento yo curo, con mi tabaco yo rezo. A mis abuelos les pido la memoria de mi compromiso. Con mi aliento yo curo, con mi tabaco yo rezo. Veo en el fuego el futuro, la memoria regresa a mi pueblo. Porque mi cuerpo es la tierra, mi agua viene con sangre, porque mi espíritu es fuego y mi palabra es el aire, porque mi cuerpo es la tierra, mi agua viene con sangre, porque mi espíritu es fuego y mi palabra es el aire. Con mi aliento yo curo, con mi tabaco yo rezo. A mis abuelos les pido la memoria de mi compromiso. Con mi aliento yo curo, con mi tabaco yo rezo. Veo en el fuego el futuro, la memoria regresa a mi pueblo, la memoria regresa a mi pueblo, la memoria regresa a mi pueblo.
Beautiful, James. Thank you. James O'Keefe, ladies and gentlemen, and Mapacho, one of these many amazing plant spirits that we must approach in a reverent way. So happy Virgo New Moon. And I think that's a wonderful word for Virgo, sacred, reverent, priestess. And there's some other words that will show up as well as we dive into the chart together to align our intentions to the energy of this Virgo new moon and the celestial choreography. But I want to start with a story. And maybe I'll start with this picture once again. This is an image of Venus here above Mount Tamalpais that I just took as James and I connected. Just out my window here. It's now since gotten dark. If you look very closely here above the sky chakras, yeah, the root and the sacral and the solar and the heart and the throat and all the way up, you find the very bright Venus, who, if you've been watching the sky, you'll notice is moving further and further south every day. For Libra is a southern sign, and Venus is on her way into the sign of Scorpio. And Venus right now is aligned to a very powerful star, a very important star astrologically, which is the star Spica or Spica, or in other places known as Chitra. And maybe you can see it on your screen, maybe not, but this is Spica here, just below Venus. And I'm going to show a different image of that star, thanks to Stellarium astronomy software. So this is Venus. This is this moment that I took that photo. Looked a lot more like this, right? But here's Venus, and just above Spica, who is the shaft of wheat that the priestess of the heavens holds. And interestingly, that star, who in our day and age aligns to 24 degrees tropical Libra, that longitude is shared by another one of the Bohemian stars, Mercury's magical stars. And that star is Arcturus. Here's a wonderful trick if you know the Big Dipper in your sky. And of course, that's a Northern Hemisphere thing. For the Big Dipper points to North Star. But if you follow the tail of the bear, or the arc of the Dipper, we say follow the arc to Arcturus. And now usually you'll hear a spike to Spica, although back in the day it was speed on to Spica. And so though they live at these same longitudes, 24 degrees tropical Libra, Spica is very close to the ecliptic. This is the path of the sun in our sky, this yellow curve here, where Arcturus is about 30 degrees away, 30 degrees north. So this is something I invite you to go see in your sky, in the sunset sky at this time. If you're in the southern hemisphere, you'll certainly be able to see Venus with Spica, but Arcturus will not be available to your eyes. You're going to see some of these stars who are down below the ground for us, like the Southern Cross. In the northern hemisphere, you'll be able to see Venus, who will show you Spica, and then just look up and you'll find a very bright red star, Arcturus. And then Spica itself, especially after it gets a little bit darker, you'll see just a blue diamond in the sky. So I meditate on the two stars often. They're very different, and then also in the same place. The same place which you might be surprised to hear as 24 Libra when you see the scales so far over here. But very importantly, the tropical zodiac is not about constellations. This is the constellation called Virgo. I prefer to call Priestess to differentiate signs and constellations, which are very different things. This is the constellation of the Lion, where you now see this Virgo sun. Actually, I'll show you tomorrow. I think it's around somewhere in this kind of 6:50-ish p.m. time that the Virgo New Moon aligns. In this case, the moon will be well above the sun because the moon's path is not the same as the sun's. Their paths cross at what we call the lunar nodes, which are currently in tropical Sagittarius, the south node, and Gemini, the north node, and Virgo is right in between. So this is actually the time of year when the new moon is as far from an eclipse as possible. In the northern hemisphere sky, moon passing above the sun, and this new moon will be, like most of them, a no moon because the moon will be under the beams of the sun. This is true for Mars now too. So Mars is setting after the sun, but before Mars sets, it's still too bright out to see Mars's light. So this is a time where Mars is being taken over by the sun, overcome by the sun, and will move into the fire to be reconfigured for his next cycle. So maybe I'll speak more about that when the chart comes in. But I want to honor this truth that there are many systems of astrology. And systems is a very Virgo word, right? So it doesn't have to be some bad word, systems. That's a beautiful word. Like astrology is a sacred system, acupuncture, vegetalismo, something that came in before, music, carpentry. Just voicing some of the sacred systems that are in the room right now. Astronomy. And it's a very confusing thing for many that the constellations and the signs do not align. In fact, there are many different zodiacs, and the tropical zodiac is directionally derived. So it always lifts my heart to hear James call the directions in before we start. The most popular zodiacs in use by astrology today are the tropical zodiac, which has 0 degrees Libra here, right kind of at the top of the priestess, if you will. Or the sidereal zodiac, the of the stars zodiac, which is the principal zodiac used in India, in Jyotish astrology, although many Westerners also employ a sidereal zodiac, and most of them are configured in such a way that they're calibrated to the star Spica. So it's a wonderful thing for Venus to be there now. And just starting to write an article about this very common attack that rationalists of our day stake to claim astrology is fake, which is that the signs and the constellations don't align. And well, let's speak Virgo. It's very much a logical fallacy called a straw man argument. And while I'm not going to get into all of that today, what I do want to say is that when you find your own sacred systems challenged, I hope that you will receive that challenge as an invitation to explore. And be careful not to be so easily convinced that what you were taught was wrong. It typically just means that there's more to learn. Many see this priestess of the heavens as Astarte, who it said was last to leave because humans here on earth were losing reverence, losing the way. And so the guides and guidesses split. But Astarte loved us and wanted us to come back to balance. And so she stayed so close until finally she gave up. But some say that she is this constellation in the heavens, staying close enough so that she will be the first one back when we reclaim our sacred path. I want to share this beautiful painting by Kathleen Schmieder, who's been providing wonderful art for the archetypes as we've been journeying through these moon songs the last few months now. So you can see Hermes, the caduceus staff, the sacred geometries below. And I love that she's sitting in this hand that also holds these ferns of the forest. We see the taji, her dress. And really, we're seeing symbols from many traditions and sacred symbols, sacred systems. I love this word undependence for Virgo. I said it accidentally to a client once in a session, and I realized it was a happy accident. That independent is a word I've often used for Aries. And that's important. As I say that word, I do not mean isolation independence. That's the false independence our false culture would convince us means. That we are weak if we ask a neighbor for help, and that we're meant to stay locked up in our own space and only connect through these video pages and whatnot. But insulation, independence, knowing who we are in our skin. And of course, that's a lifelong mission. Independence is a different thing. This word Virgo or virgin truly means unmarried. And this in the day had nothing to do with chastity. Somehow this archetypal 180 has gone down where a habit was fit on the priestess and they were buried alive if they broke this oath of chastity. And turned into nuns, it would seem, in our day. And when we read about Virgo in the pages of the astrology books, we hear this skeptic, cynic, obsessive compulsive, a computer programmer. I very rarely read about the sacred, although the astrologers I love and trust will not leave that word out of it. And that every action, every moment is a ceremony, is sacred if we remember this is true and we choose to live our lives in that reverent way. It's easier said than done, right? I wish I could show you this art on screen. It's from the Wild Unknown Animal deck, and it's B. And I actually drew this one quite intentionally. I flipped through the cards because the bee has been dancing with the light here at the top of the room and playing these rhythms. I'm not sure if you hear them on your mic, on the mic or not. It's happening right now. But a really beautiful reminder of living work in a sacred way. That bee, and they each have their own gig, and it's wonderful to see at this time of year these bees pollinating the flowers. Like we're just sitting outside and there's these cone flowers that they go in with their fuzzy butts hanging out. It's a beautiful thing. And the bees have so much to teach us about geometry, right? The honeycomb is an endless study. And I see Virgo as this kind of sacred geometry of the world, the matrix, even, if you will. My Taurus in many levels is there too, because it really is like the beauty of nature and embodiment. But Virgo, I think, is where not only we see these sacred shapes and allow them to dance us, but we begin to understand their message and hear their stories and see their mathematics. And that, of course, is a process. It's not so much of a proverbial new age download in the space of the zodiac, right? That might be more of the way of the other side, at Pisces, or perhaps even Sagittarius, the other Jupiterian sign. But traditionally, and we see this caduceus staff and Kathleen's beautiful artwork. Yeah. Virgo is said to be a sign of Mercury, and Mercury's earth sign, earth being the body and the body mind. I love to tell. Every time I tell it, it feels like it finds a new little bit. It goes something. Before the temples were disheveled, broken into ruins, buried. Before we forgot the ancient names, he was known as Breed, and then Bridget. But at this time now, on the other side of the forgetting, Saint Bridget was her name. Or at least one day would be. At this time, she was but a nun who had a love for the children of this world and wanted to make a safe place for the orphans. Many, many children had lost their parents to this great war, this conquest. And so Bridget went to the halls of the new king, who was not a nice man, and spoke to him in front of a full court, praying that this would move his hand to do the right thing. For she asked for a piece of land, not much, just enough to build a safe space for those children who had been left alone. The king, as you may have guessed, was not swayed, and in a terrible way, he told this nun, that was the new word for what she did, that she could have all of the land, that she could wrap her filthy black robes around. But Bridget was not defeated. She left with her head bowed low. Perhaps because it was heavy with focus, she sought a solution. She paced and paced, trying to receive the solution to this problem. Finally, she looked to the sky, saw the bright evening star, and the evening star, and was reminded to rest. So she sat at the foot of an ancient oak, puzzled, and took a breath, and touched her toes, and cleared her head, breathed again, and this time so deeply that she smelled the beauty of the evening moisture, the end of the day. She was amazed because she found that she was staring at the ground when she came out of some trance. She was amazed because the ground was moving. What's this? Upon further investigation, it wasn't the ground at all. There were beings, tiny ones, working as a team, these ones we call ants. And they were carrying those things that ants carry to those places that ants carry them. One of these was a small black thread. Once again, Mother, the oak, the ant, had shown the child the solution. The next day, it shocked the court to find Bridget walking back into that king's throne room with her head held high and not a thread on her body. She had not slept a minute, for that night was devoted to her unstitching her robe and tying all the threads together so that they would be enough to encompass acres of land. This king was not a nice man, and probably was not usually good on his word, but this time he was. And it is a land where a sacred church still stands, a church that was first devoted as an orphanage. And so I hope you hear in this a reminder to look up and also look down. There's a piece of the story I actually usually tell, which is a beautiful oak leaf was falling from that tree. And this is the time we were out on a hike today. Found a place away from the smoke in a redwood stand. But many of the leaves, certainly not those evergreens, but many of the leaves are starting to turn here in California where I live. A beautiful thing to see, and also a reminder that seasons change. So here we are halfway through the month called Virgo Sun, the last month of the Northern Hemisphere's summer. This mutable sign where we mutate from one season to the next. Of course, for our friends south of Earth's equator, this means moving from winter to spring, and here from summer to fall. I'll spend just a little time with this chart. When I see Venus at these degrees, I think Spica. And it's always a blessing to see the planets in the sky. I hope that's an offering that the heavens have been giving to you. It's amazing at this time to see after sunset Venus in the southwest and Jupiter in the southeast, one Venus heading to her rest and the other Jupiter having recently risen, that they are at the same altitude above the horizon. There's something about that. I will tell you, I have not yet found any of the ancient authors of astrology of the sacred system speaking about this power when planets sit the same distance above the horizon. Then I see it as something very powerful. In this chart, which you'll see between Venus and Jupiter, the triangle, and we now call it trine, and we speak of it as a very benefic energy. The same between Mercury and Saturn. These air triangles. Mercury cohabiting with Venus. Well, Venus is with Spica here. Mercury is with Porrima. Porrima, the left shoulder, usually it's drawn this way, of the priestess of the heavens, and some say it's a star of great prophecy. Now, importantly, Mercury has a hidden message in this chart. Mercury is, and elongation. In our sacred system, the way to find this is to look to Mercury's speed. So Mercury's now moving at like 1 degree and 13 minutes per day, about the same speed as Venus and not much faster than the sun. Some days from now, we will find that Mercury's speed is equal to the sun's speed. And that's going to happen, oh, it looks like September 12th or September 13th. So this is called Mercury maximum elongation, and it is when Mercury is most visible as an evening star. Now, I will say that in the sign of Libra, especially that Mercury has what's known as southern latitude right now, this maximum elongation of Mercury as an evening star is going to be much more visible for our southern hemisphere friends. On the other side of Mercury's cazimi, Mercury and Sun will align in the middle of Mercury's 3-week retrograde in the sign of Libra on October 9th, shortly after the next new moon, the Libra new moon, right with Mars. And this will go Earth, Mercury, Sun, Mars. And then on the other side of that, Mercury will be a morning star and reach height also in the sign of Libra in October. And that will be very visible as a morning star for the Northern Hemisphere. So one thing I'd love to share is just the truth that this sacred system of tropical astrology, it is a directional device. And we also live on a world that's a tale of two hemispheres. And so the end of summer for one side and the end of winter for the other, of course, in between at this shift, at this mutable time, when we become cardinal and move to Libra, and that's the sun's journey in about 15 days, there's equality, equal night, equal light. Well, that would be true if the sun was a dot, but it's actually a disk in our sky. And so we want to be particular when we talk Virgo. And still, I will leave that there. Either way, this essence of balance, of equal. And whether you live in Melbourne, Australia, or Stockholm, Sweden, at equinox time, the center of the sun rises due east and sets due west. This is a gift that is given to us only twice a year. Reflections about the equinox degrees, right? So in this tropical zodiac at 0 Libra, 0 Aries, are called contra-anticia or contra-antiscia. Scia is Greek for shadow. So this degree 14 Virgo has a contra-antition of 15.5 degrees Libra, somewhere here between Mercury and Venus now. And there will be a time coming up very soon where Mercury and first the moon and then the sun are contra-anticia. There's a balance about these equinox points. And the image is that while one Virgo is rising north of east, setting north of west, the other Libra is rising south of east, setting south of west. And these contra-antitions, they're called, set in a balanced way about those cardinal directions. So Virgo and Libra traditionally are said to be signs that cannot see eye to eye. They are inconjunct. There's typically said to be an aversion between inconjunct signs. Signs the tradition tells us are blind to one another. But there are many astronomical factors where we find alleviation to these aversions, and one is this anticia, contra-anticia signs that traditionally are called like and girding, and I could go on and on and on. But I'm going to get to the point here and say this, that there is a psychic connection available between Virgo and Libra that is not always there when these planets align in this way. Virgo sometimes can feel like a stumbling block when we are on our way to Libra. You know, Leo, we talked about last month, and just this creative impulse, like the not only the right to create, but perhaps the responsibility to do so as a human being. And Leo, as I like to say, has its eyes on the stage, which of course is Libra, right? Where we start to really relate. But Virgo is in between and says, oh, what will it be? You said you can do anything you want. Well, music, then play your scale. So when you get to the stage, they run in rather than running away from the noise that you make. And of course, it can feel in this place where we are demanded to tend to our sacred work in our daily tasks, where we're asked to play the scales and hammer the nails, one step at a time, one foot in front of the other. It can feel, of course, that sometimes in our sacred way, we forget why we started praying in the first place, and we have to be careful with that. But of course, this is a place where we polish the stone, where we hone the craft, so that when we do, as it said, kind of pop up into the world of othership, not only do we know who we are, but we have a gift to offer. What is your gift that you offer, and how can you psychically see ahead to the other side, the counterbalance, which of course is the balance, and see the elegance and the beauty waiting for you there? And do you feel like rushing to that place, or do you hear your future self reminding you to play your scales? A few other aspects I'll mention on this chart are Mars, who is just being overcome by the sun, taken under the beams at the very end of a 2-year cycle. In the sign of Virgo, opposite Neptune in Pisces. And this can be a challenging energy. There's a balance from Pluto in the sign of Capricorn, who's really been shaking things up. And I want to speak about tension and release. So Mars and Virgo opposite Neptune and Pisces. I mean, some of that will be work hard for your dreams. Some of that will be you can work so hard that you forgot to dream. Some of that can be that you are so committed to one particular path that you can't see the way that's being shown because your gaze is fixed in the wrong direction. More tension, Venus square Pluto. And we're asked to look at the abuse, we're asked to look at the imbalances, we're asked to look at the power systems, corruption, control, abuse. And there's release. So the square, the Venus-Pluto square, releasing to a Mars-Pluto trine. The Mars-Neptune opposition releasing to that Mars-Pluto trine, or the Neptune-Pluto sextile. And I know I'm speaking a lot of jargon here, so what does it mean? And I would say when we face our abusers, we will realize that we are being reminded that there is a more powerful way available to us if we remember reverence, if we remember the sacred, if we remember to walk our talk. And if we get lost in the wood that we chop and the water that we carry, in a furrowed brow, trying to solve everything now, then they sit by the riverside at the foot of the oak, watching the leaf fall, learning from the ants and the bees, remembering that there are so many guides, that we are directed, protected, ever loved by all that is. A few more things to mention. Mercury just opposite Chiron in Aries. Mercury also and Tisha, Neptune in Pisces. If the sun is at 10 Libra, it casts the same length of shadow at the time when the sun is held by 20 degrees of Pisces. See a shadow. And we see here the woundings of feeling isolated, trapped. And I think we have a lot of angst here, and we should, at control systems that are directing consciousness to be less human. And there's a lot of revolution in this chart. These trines with the Aquarian beings, and especially this new moon at 1438 Virgo in a perfect trine, applying to Uranus, Taurus, Uranus retrograde at 1439 Taurus. It wouldn't shock us to see some story here about procedures and body technology. And I will end by honoring the grand air trine of Libra Mercury, Aquarius Saturn, and the Gemini North Node. Please choose to walk your sacred way on a path towards truth.
Aho, brother.
Music makes the world go round.
It's a force of nature.
Yeah, these things are getting more astrological than it originally intended. You know, some of that is because we have a little bit less company this time. Is we didn't get a song from Eric or Victoria this time. They're working on an album and all of the kind of studio things, like really getting into that Virgo space at this point, I imagine. And I asked Water if she'd come and play, and she is on a solo journey. Actually, you know what? I'm not sure it's solo. I should be careful. You know, all this Virgo, and suddenly I feel the hermit in that lantern. But I think I might be wrong about that, and so I'm no longer wrong. I just reclaim that statement. So anyway, Water is in Alaska hunting the aurora borealis, which is something I still have not had my eyes blessed by yet in this life. Hopefully someday. So astrology also, I guess, makes the world go round, or the world going round makes astrology, is a much better way to say
seems like
that.
the world going round is astrology.
That's exactly true. Days and years, my friends, sacred time, time and space. Well, so James, maybe you could take us out with a song that you've written before, or one you choose to write right now.
I'm gonna write one right now. I'm feeling the hammering the nails and setting the sails and playing, as well as aligning with that kind of get into the scales and the practice in order to realize the dream, into the lantern, into the hermit, into the cave, in order to kind of dream the community. So
Yeah, you know,
I'm
I
feeling
don't
that.
want to interrupt the flow, although I did just remember I want to share a couple places online and talk about how these things will start going as we move forward. And also just to share, well, a thought. I'm going to do that after this, though. So let me first share once again this beautiful piece of art by Kathleen Schmieder. I would love to share also her website. So let me find that here. Well, that one's mine. But Kathleen and her amazing collage and paintings can be found at mind with a Y, scaping.net. And you can find prints. I have a beautiful one of some deer right here, and all sorts of happenings. This more is real. Kathleen's been sending some words my way, and I'm not going to read those today. I'm hoping that she'll be here to speak for her wonderful art. But I've really been appreciative of having her vision kind of feed these things over the last months. You can find me at GeminiBrett.com with two T's, Gemini T's, you know. I think here on the courses page, you'll find your way to Sacred Astronomy Level 1 if you'd like to hear more about some of these things that I was doing. But what I want to share most importantly here, besides the offerings page where you can find all sorts of different journeys, you might dig this directions video with music by Water Eye, for example. But if you go to the home page, you will find a place that cares not about time, but does about space. But right here, sign up for my newsletter, please, because I would love to inform you as we move forward about a community space that we are slowly establishing and getting all the ones and zeros right, so we can do this more in a live context and share and drop in with you, and to also share creations and honor yours. And we're going to have some fun classes there, and I don't know, lotteries and raffles and all sorts of cool things. So please get involved, hop on over to my mailing list, and we will keep you informed in that way. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to share is I was contemplating two things. One, how you can play your scales as a musician, and then suddenly your playing is all scaly and it's like not happening, and it's like less happening than before you developed all that technique even, right? Because before it was just like soul and just reaching for whatever came in, but you might not have the facility to play what was wanting to come through. And then there's this time in between where it's just kind of like over technical and riffy, and but on the other side of all that is this beautiful thing, because now the fingers or the embouchure or whatever, the lungs will do what they need to do because they have been developed through this sacred work, through this prayer, through this practice. And then all of that just fades away, like sandcastles in the waves. And on the other side is that sound that was wanting to come through you, and that now you've developed your own facility. It can. And I think this is a month like that we want to make sure we play the scales, but remember why we are playing them. So whatever that means to you in your life. The other thing I'll talk about is this 4 stages of development, as it's told, that there is unconscious incompetence, right? So we don't know how to do a thing, but we don't know how to do a thing. So there's no issue there. But then, and some of that I would just say in this kind of trust the science domain, where we are not maybe looking at the data ourselves or pursuing that, there really is an unconscious ignorance. When you start having a look, or when you start taking notice, right now we have this conscious incompetence. Sorry, I meant to say unconscious incompetence before, not ignorance. So unconscious incompetence, and then this conscious incompetence. Oh my gosh, I can't do a thing. I remember when I first heard a saxophone player who could really play, and it was like, oh, right. And then that's where the invitation is, and we often turn our back, but that says, come in, get good at this, polish that stone. And we do, and then you get to that place of conscious competence, right? But that can be that place where we're just like really technical and kind of, it sounds like we're practicing when we play, but the other side of that is now unconscious competence. And that's the goal, right? Like the baby looks at every step when she learns to walk, but now we just walk. Until maybe like me right now, and at times in my life, I'm like, oh, I don't walk right. And then you can take it all the way back to step 1 and build it up, and look at some of these habits we form, and, where we got stuck, and speak to those parts and let them move and flow in different ways. All right. Well, I didn't write a song about that, but I bet you James will. So I'm going to close my video down and say goodbye to you, new moonlings, now. So thank you so much for spending time with James O'Keefe and myself, Gemini Brett, and aligning your own heart and life and love and creativity and flow with us to the power of this Virgo new moon. May the heavenly harmonies see us through.
For we're family, waiting for the table to be set. I've been practicing my scales, I've been swimming to the two-step, holding on to hope, hoping for emotion in this boat as we take her through the maiden's ocean. Holy Mother, you've been working hard, building castles, washed away now, falling. All I need is time to hold it. No more family, come learn with me. Come open up your eyes and ears to sweet stories, the recognition that you've been working to hammer home this point, this joint, this metaphysicality. We anoint ourselves in the body. So through the shadows move, help me become strong and pure. No, I forget my words, let them fall away. No one is afraid. It's all part of the game. So I sit tight to organize this ride, a roller coaster for me to fly over obstacles. It's in my heart's eye, sitting through it, being fluid, letting planets hang on me as the center of universal calmness. Hey, so pay for it all, calling out to story about in your fall. So I pray for your lunation and mine. I pray with good taste and plenty of time. Just watching this caduceus around us wine, feeling my shadows and Tisha, playing hide and seek with the light in my spine, following the sun and moon at the same time, peeking up at Jupiter by Venus and noticing how they align, working to straighten my systems right. learning from the elements and elders in nature divine. Cruising like a virgin through this new mind.